My Hero Academia Chapter 423 is finally out, and with it we pick up exactly where the last chapter left off, with Midoriya landing a direct attack on All For One, smashing into the villain, who has now taken on another absolutely monstrous form. Dude's gigantic again! As Midoriya lands this punch on All For One, which causes blood to spurt out of like all of his orifices, and as all of the heroes cheer on Midoriya, All For One notes that he was not only not able to dodge this attack thanks to Danger Sense being overloaded by all of the incoming attacks from all the heroes, but he also for some reason has lost his ability to regenerate, meaning that every attack on him has caused permanent damage. All For One ultimately denotes this inability to regenerate as a consequence of his mental state diminishing after he finally lost Yoichi. Basically, after Yoichi died, after his vestige was smashed into Shigaraki's, All For One lost his drive and the mental fortitude to fully use his power. This accompanied by the fact, as Midoriya explains to All For One, if a weakened body tries to use One For All, said person's body would explode outward and destroy itself. A fact that was actually explained to us at the very start of the series. And thusly, as All For One technically holds the power of One For All, a power that was cultivated through 9 users, his weakened body is now experiencing that pain. That's right, All For One is being destroyed inside out by One For All. And with this culmination of everything hitting All For One at once, both inside and outside of his body and soul, the giant monstrosity slowly starts to crumble bit by bit before the heroes' very eyes. All of the heroes looking on as the being before them slowly fades away, start to settle down and begin to believe that the war and fight is finally over. However, of course, All For One being, well, All For One, aka a huge relentless dick, absolutely refuses to die just yet, as he desperately uses his Dark Spikes quirk to cling the different pieces of his decaying body back together. He is truly on his last legs and desperate to stay alive. As All For One forcibly and gruesomely holds himself together, he declares that he can't die just yet, because the Demon Lord is absolute and he has to fulfill his dream. All For One, now with a fierceness in his eyes and terrifying intentions in his mind, declares that for him to win, all he needs to do is just start it all over again. Just like he did with Shigaraki, he just needs to transfer the All For One quirk to Midoriya or anyone else in the battlefield to take over their body and continue anew. With this declaration, All For One then lunges with his remains at Midoriya and raises his hand ready to transfer. But as he reaches Midoriya, not only does Deku ignite his arm with One For All again, ready to land another devastating attack, but in seeing the duo prepare to destroy one another, Kurogiri starts to act up, and his quirk starts to activate. Present Mike, seeing Kurogiri's quirk start and his body begin to teleport away, shouts out the name Shirakumo. But still in the midst of warping himself, Kurogiri replies, "Shota, Yamada, I'm sorry, but I have to go. I need to protect Tomura Shigaraki." He then teleports himself up and between Deku and All For One and uses his body to create a warp portal to prevent Midoriya from making contact with All For One. In seeing this, Present Mike starts to cry, saying that Shirakumo always reaches out to those who need help. But unfortunately, his tears are not of joy, but of sorrow, as Kurogiri, not able to withstand the overuse of his quirk and both the power of All For One and One For All within his warp gate, starts to disappear. As our beloved warp gate villain begins to fade away into nothingness, and as Midoriya desperately tries to pull back and prevent his arm and himself from being taken away in the warp gate, Kurogiri leaves All For One with one final message. All For One, give Shigaraki back his friends are waiting for him. However, despite Kurogiri's last desperate act as a villain/hero, it isn't enough to stop our beloved heroes. As mere moments before Midoriya fully enters the warp gate, the gate itself is blown up by none other than Katsuki Bakugo, who, with the help of an ice ramp made by Todoroki, has propelled himself right onto the scene to aid Midoriya by not only destroying the warp gate with a mount explosion, by the way, but also to give Midoriya the final push he needs to rocket back into and attack All For One. As Bakugo uses the last of his strength to explode Midoriya right towards the King of Villainy, he makes sure to leave our hero with the warning, be careful, or else I'll end up surpassing you, Izuku. God, he's so cool. Midoriya, now once again rocketing towards All For One, readies his arm with One For All, and as he quickly approaches the villain, he exclaims that although he can never forgive him, he knows that despite what he claims, All For One is not an unstoppable demon lord or monster. He's just a very lonely man. Midoriya then reaches All For One, and as he collides with the villain, with both players ready to unleash their final attack, the story cuts away to inside of All For One's vestige world. Within this world, we see the body of the All For One we were introduced to talking with a flame. A flame that represents the spirit of Yoichi, as it's revealed that with his last punch, Midoriya transferred all of One For All's last remaining embers to All For One, meaning that Midoriya transferred the last fragments of Yoichi to his brother. All For One, in seeing the flames before him, says he doesn't care about anything else right now. He just wants to see Yoichi's face. But Yoichi, refusing to abide by his brother's wishes, instead goes on to say that he had hoped someday he would be able to save his brother and bring him down the right path. However, he was unable to. And so, now, after all those years of torment, carnage, chaos, and combat, this generational sibling rivalry will finally end. Izuku Midoriya is going to be the hero that allows both Shigaraki brothers to finally rest. But All For One, far from satisfied with this ending, angrily shouts at the flame, stating that he won't allow it. And as he desperately reaches out to grab the now flickering flame in his hands, he calls out to his brother, finally admitting that he loves him, and he can't go on existing without him by his side. And as if in an ironic twist of this statement, as Yoichi's light fades out in his brother's hands, he states that finally it's time for his brother to pay for the crime of using so many people. As he also reveals that the two of them aren't the only people inhabiting this vestige world. As from the darkness behind a completely shocked All For One appears the vestiges of not only all of the previous users of One For All ready to land a united punch on All For One, but also the vestige of Shigaraki. As from the glowing light in his hands appears the vestige of Deku, also preparing a punch, until eventually everyone unleashes their attack, resulting in this beautiful shot of Midoriya in the light and Shigaraki and the other users in the dark, connecting their fists through All For One, obliterating and defeating the villain once and for all. As All For One and the other vestiges fade away, both Tomura and Midoriya are left alone in the brightened vestige world, standing facing each other with their fists still in contact. And it's here where this fated duo have one final conversation. As Shigaraki goes on to explain, he honestly thought he had been completely swallowed and destroyed by All For One. But, as it turns out, it was Nana Shimura's vestige that searched for him in the depths of the abyss and connected with him, preventing him from disappearing entirely. Shigaraki then takes a moment to say, Kurogiri. As we see out in the real world, the last remaining bits of the Warp Gate villain vanish away. We then go right back to the conversation where Shigaraki continues, saying that even though he briefly got his body back during the final fight, he actually didn't manage to destroy anything. And I mean, unless you're not counting Mount Fuji, the ground, or buildings, technically he's right. When Shigi regained control, he didn't actually hurt anyone other than Midoriya, of course. Shigi then goes on to say that in the end, he admits Midoriya was right. Deep inside all of his pain, suffering, and desire for destruction, there was just a crying boy looking for help. Midoriya responds to this by saying that in truth, he couldn't forgive Shigaraki for all he had done, and that's why he fought so hard. But he also fought this hard because he just wanted it to stop. He wanted the sadness inside Shigaraki to be over. And as we see the two once again, we see now that they are no longer the battered and destroyed versions of themselves from before, but they're both two kids talking as if nothing happened to them. In this form, Shigaraki, realizing his time has come, leaves Midoriya with one final request. Izuku Midoriya, if Spinner is still alive, tell him this. Tomura Shigaraki fought to destroy until the very end. To which Midoriya replies that in the end, he managed to destroy what he really needed to. As the story cuts back out to the real world, where it's revealed that Tomura Shigaraki's body has been completely destroyed and turned to dust, as Midoriya is up in the air alone with his hand raised into the sky as the rain above him has stopped and the sun has started to shine once again. And that's it for chapter 423. If you liked this video, don't forget to leave a like. For more content like this, subscribe to the Lunchtime crew. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. It's lunchtime.